Hey Richard, hope all is going well, man. All is going well. Just getting a couple of these little streams set right quick. All right. Should move that, and I think we can go ahead and get started. Well, give me another second here. Just kind of sharing this out, and then we'll kind of dive into the content tonight. All right. I have my outline. Let me just make a couple notes. All right. So, Richard, while the stream is kind of like pushing out and everything else, if you have any questions, feel free. We'll jump in and kind of do that. But for the time being, I'm also going to go in and really address a lot of where people seem to get hung up with starting in real estate. They think that they have to know everything or they have to have all this money, when quite simply, you just have to have action. A lot of people, they think that they need to really just learn everything. That's not the case. You need to learn enough to be dangerous, so to speak. And by that, I mean the information is out there. It's so easy to get the how, right? The blueprint of how do you wholesale houses? How do you analyze a rental property? How do you analyze flips? How do you flip houses? It's all freely available. What separates the people from the sidelines to the people that are actually out there doing it is simply action. And at this point in the game, I've seen too many people start with nothing. And especially for me to have started with a little, which still more than what some people start with, but I've literally seen people start with $5 and they would roll forward that flipping strategy, right? And just to recap that, Gary Vee, he's the one that introduced this concept to me. Go out on a Saturday morning, take $5, buy $5 worth of stuff at a garage sale, things that you can actually turn around and sell for a profit. Now, over the course of the next week, you'll put it on Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, any buy sell trade groups, and the goal is to get $25 for the $5 that you spent. The following week is to go and turn the $25 into 100, and then 100 to 400, and then the 400 just to 1,000. So in the course of a month, 4 weeks, you can actually spend $5 up into $1,000. But one thing that I've really learned is that people don't necessarily want to hear that. They want to hear this magic button, right? There's this magic pill that you can just take and it all comes to you with no work. I haven't found that yet. So I tell people what you really have to do is focus on the action that you can take, the resources that you do have, and then grow with that. For example, when we got started, I thought that I was going to go out there and just wholesale real estate. I'd taken this course on YouTube, and it was Phil Putiovsky, is I believe how you pronounce his last name. But the channel is Freedom Mentor. He had this course, just absolutely free content on teaching you how to wholesale properties. And after studying that for a little while, I ended up going back in and saying one day, I closed my laptop and I told my wife, I said, "Hey, I think I want to take $1,000 and I'm going to buy some bandit signs and I'm going to go out here and I'm going to wholesale real estate." That was where a lot of it changed for us because my wife was able to have the confidence of saying, "Hey, look, why don't we just go to the bank and see if they'll approve us for a loan?" And long story short, yes, they did. It was DSCR before I even knew what that was, which means debt service coverage ratio loan. So we're looking at, does the property meet certain criteria? And all that to say, I can really get into that. But a large part of it was we got started by taking action. We went out there, we found a property that made sense. A lot of people right now, we're in a very interesting market. Sellers are clinging to these hopes of, the prices that they were able to get a couple years ago, and buyers are clinging to the hopes of getting the deal of a lifetime. So I'm operating somewhere in that happy medium. By watching the market, analyzing certain things, we're able to still pick up properties and pick up properties at a profitable price point. Yeah, try to say in that 5 times fast. Hell, I'm not even going to try to say it again. You can rewind this live if you want to hear that. But a lot of that comes down to being able to reverse engineer your deals. So let's say, for example, you are looking to buy a rental property, and in this rental property, you're going to let me see if I can just kind of give a visual. Let's say that you find a property that they're asking $100,000 for. And whenever you underwrite your property, you're going to have certain holdbacks, right? Certain things that you need to know that are going to be fixed expenses for you, such as taxes, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, vacancy, and management. Well, whenever you have a gross line, right? So what the property would rent for on the market, let's say that it would rent for $2,000 a month. And then out of that, you hold 30% just for maintenance, taxes, and management. That's a little bit aggressive. I understand. I am a little bit more conservative than some people out there, and that's okay. It's treated us well and given us a lot of cushion to make mistakes and increase the learning curve, right? But let's just say, for example, that 2,000 minus the 600 minus your property taxes minus your insurance will leave you with, mm, let's just say $1,000, $1,000 a month. Now it's all about reverse engineering. Okay. So we've already subtracted our operating costs to get to our NOI, so to speak. NOI is going to be your net operating income. Now that you've got an NOI of $1,000, well, we want to factor in how much can I afford with the debt of the property? Well, here's the other thing. What is your goal cash flow? What net amount do you want to see every single month is your minimum? This price point, would it be $200, $300? If so, then you back that down to say, okay, what kind of mortgage can I get at $800 a month, right? Well, let's just do a quick little calculation here. And this, quite simply, I just went into Google and I said, calculate a 15-year mortgage at 7.25%, that the note is $800 a month. So that would be 15 years at 7.25. Well, it's not giving me the input that I want. So I'll just go in and I'll pull up a mortgage calculator. But remember, that's where we're that's where our target is, right? Bank rate calculator. There we go. So I'm going to go out here, 15 years, 7.25. And now we just have to reverse engineer a little bit more. So could we get a $100,000 mortgage on a 15 year at, again, 7.25? Looks like your monthly payment is $913. So we can't quite afford a $100,000 note. Let's see, could $80,000 do it? So, oh, here we go. We hit the sweet spot. So, a $80,000 mortgage at 7.25% interest on a 15-year amortization is $730 a month, principal and interest. All right. So, by the time you factor in everything else, now remember, we had already held back 600. That was going to be 200 apiece for maintenance, vacancy management. We were going to hold back another $400 for property taxes and insurance. So now we're at $1,000. All right, that's our NOI, our net operating income. Well, if we know that we want at least $200 a month in cash flow, we know that we can afford up to an $800 mortgage. So how do we get to that? You run in here and you start reverse engineering the mortgage to say, okay, well, I need to pick up a property for $80,000 or a mortgage for $80,000. Yeah. Doesn't sound like the most attractive deal out there right now, does it? No. Here's the thing. You don't have to do a 15-year mortgage. You can do a 20, a 25, even a 30-year mortgage. So let's say, for example, we go to a 30-year mortgage. All right. Instead of $80,000, let's see what 120 looks like. All right. So 120,000, we're getting close. Let's go to 115. All right, $115,000. So if you can find a lender like I've got over here, I've got DSCR lenders that do 30 years. For $115,000, you'll be able to get a monthly payment of 785. So that's still going to hit your DSCR numbers. Now, are those deals out there just every single day? No, no. What they are, though, possible. You have to go out there, you have to find motivated sellers. You have to have conversations, have realtors that have conversations, have wholesalers that have conversations, expand your network so that you can grow into those things and get these kind of deals. Now, quite frankly, we're looking at this is probably closer to a 125 on the coverage. So, let's see if I'm looking at that right, give or take. So, let's just say, for example, you picked up this property for $80,000 and it needed $35,000 of work into it. All right, that's 115. You know you can afford a $115,000 mortgage. So let's just go ahead and I'm going to run some concepts by you. I don't have a presentation built out or anything like that tonight. So you're just going to have to visualize and play this back. You know, go back and kind of run some of these through your calculators. You can get calculators just about anywhere online for these deals. But if you go and you finance $115,000 and all you are is in the deal for $115,000, and you've got a property that most likely will appraise north of $160,000. It's cash flowing. Okay. You're making over $200 a month and you're still looking for long-term appreciation play. Typically in these kind of price points, depending on the market that you're in, you might pick up some appreciation, 3%, you know. Uh, I like it, even though I don't necessarily count on that. Because, see, I'm just going to go ahead and pull the curtain back for you. Our properties, they're C class properties, which means that they aren't in the best neighborhoods, but they're also not in the absolute worst neighborhoods. Typically, we'll pick up a property for 50, $60,000 and we'll be all in. Our goal is to be all in and hit what's called the 2% rule. So if I'm all in on a property, which means it is now turnkey and rent ready for $60,000 and I can rent it for $1,200 a month, and I'm in a pretty good position. So I would encourage you to learn how to go out here and reverse engineer these deals and then turn around and see how to make these deals work for you. Once you kind of have that formula, you go out there and you simply make the offers. And in this market, when homes are sitting longer and longer, I would say this is a pretty good market to do that in. You're going to hear a lot of no's. Absolutely. I want you to be aware of that. There's also this saying that closed mouths don't get fed. So you've got to be willing to go out here and make the offer so that you can make the deal. Let's see. How much do I charge for the transactional funding for wholesalers? So typically it's anywhere from 1 to 2% plus a processing fee. So if you have a $50,000 loan, or if you need $50,000 to do a double close, typically you're going to be 1 to 2% of it. So I'd say in a situation like that, just to make it worthwhile, it would be a 2% plus a processing fee. And typically processing can run like 295 to 395. See. All right. So we discussed that. Oh, all right. Now we just kind of hit on making an offer that makes sense. Let's take the time to talk about responsible leverage. This is where I feel that a lot of people kind of mess up. And with that, I also want to preface this. If you go to a boxing gym or, a martial arts studio, depending on the style, you might go to Taekwondo, karate, Kung Fu, Kempo, so many different styles. I'm just presenting with one style of investing that fits us. So if it's not for you, that's okay. Go find a style that works for you. This style is a very conservative style. It means that if we're in a property all in for that $60,000 that I just referenced, and it rents for $1,200 a month, typically those properties are appraising north of $100,000. And when you get a property that would appraise north of $100,000, your bank would refinance you, right, on what's called your loan to value. Now, you're not doing a purchase because on a purchase, that would be a LTC when you apply debt out the gate. Okay, that's loan to cost is what they're going to do. So essentially, they're going to want 20% down. If you do a rate and term refinance after you've acquired the property, whether it be through hard money, private money, or even owner financing, now you would go back to the bank and you would say, I'd like a rate and term refinance, please. Well, let's say, for example, that I have that property and it appraises 410,000. Typically, banks, they're going to give me something to the effect of an 80% maximum refinance. So if the property is worth 110,000, 80% of that is $88,000. So the bank would give me 88,000. I've only used $60,000 to acquire this property, get it ready to rent, turnkey and cash flow. So instead of taking the 88,000, I only take the 60 that I'm out. And that's key, at least for us. Because when you go out here and you take these properties and you maximize the leverage, you take out the full $88,000, a lot of people are going to be tempted to do stupid things, right? And whenever I say stupid, I mean buying a new vehicle. And because it's a tax write-off, well, you just minimize your cash flow. So good luck on your tax write-off. You're going to need some help, especially in the event of a pandemic, or eviction moratorium or anything else that would tie up your property for a prolonged amount of time without generating income. And I say that because in 2020, we heard of this thing called a lockdown and an eviction moratorium to where you could not evict for non-payment of rent. As we were going through that, we were trying to navigate these waters. It got pretty scary for a lot of people. And unfortunately, for some investors that we know, it took them and it pushed them out of the business because they were buying and refinancing every dollar that they could get. Well, in the example that I've shared with you, $60,000 is where we're at. $60,000 is what we refinance. because we just want to replenish that money back into our accounts so that we can go buy another deal and do it again and again and again. A lot of people, they're going to argue and say, but you're leaving $28,000 out there on the table. That's not a big deal for me. The $28,000 can be accessed later because as I do a few of these deals, I can go back to my bank, which now I've got a relationship with. And let me go ahead and preface, I would encourage you to have this conversation before you go do this so that you can actually take advantage of it. But I would go to the bank and I would say, hey, look, I've done 4 or 5 of these loans with you. I'd like to go ahead and, take this excess equity that I've left. And now, if you would, just take that and secure a line of credit for me with that excess equity. So let's say, for example, you've done 10 deals identical to what I've described, right? That would be $280,000 now that you could leverage into a line of credit. And what can you do with that leverage? Well, you can go and you can buy more properties, cash. You can go and do flips and buy rentals at the same time. You can even start doing private money lending and play just the arbitrage game. If the bank's charging you 8% and you're charging 12 plus points, you're able to make some pretty decent money on the spread. So there's ways to make this happen. You don't have to be reckless. You don't have to be desperate to get out there and make these things. Now, hopefully, what I've said tonight has resonated with a number of people. And, whenever you watch this or whenever you do watch this, I would appreciate you just putting a comment in the chat, if it's something that you found to be valuable. Now, is it something that you're going out there and you're finding just raining deals down? It depends on your deal flow. But I will tell you it's still possible. We just had one under contract. We let it go because the short sale was taking too long, but the numbers were going to be numbering. In the meantime, I've got an apartment complex that we're looking for. And also, I've got 41 acres that I'm looking at for a development. While that would be a good deal, waiting and messing up the timeline, and it could have an impact down the road, I decided that it was best to let that go. And then whenever the short sale gets approved, the agent, she'll probably come back to me. And if I can, I'll pick it up at that time. But until then, I'm going to move on to other deals. I want to keep my money moving forward. It's all about the velocity of money and how can you grow it? How can you fold it forward? So with that, if anybody has any questions before I get ready to wrap it up for the night, I'm going to go in there and I think I'm going to watch The Accountant too. Yeah, looks like it would be a good movie. So we'll check it out. A little bit of action. Let's see. That's everything that I actually had on my notes tonight. So I hope that you have a great evening and a fantastic week coming up. If you need anything in the meantime, just feel free to reach out. Again, my phone number, call me. It was probably going to go to voicemail. So I would encourage you to text me or send me a DM on social media. I do respond to those a lot faster. So again, have a fantastic week and take care.